I may, I'd like to address the men in the room today. And this is not to exclude their house, their women, their fragile vessels, the flowers that beautify the room, as every man stands in representation, or every man is a walking symbol of a woman, of his mother, whom taught him love in the purest form. Every man stands as a representation of his wife, and which is a beneficiary of this love, and his children. Every man stands in representation of his sister and his aunt and his niece and his daughter. But I'd like to address the men in the room today, if I may. And no doubt you are a very responsible man. So we honor you today, as well as your mothers and your wives and your daughters and your nieces and your aunts. This place is one of the greatest lessons, is one of the greatest signs of what happens when men lose focus of their priorities and responsibilities. And I say, if a man loses focus of his priorities and responsibilities for 1 second, then within that second, he's lost his manhood. Because seconds transform into minutes, and minutes transform into hours, and hours transform into days, and days transform into years. The years that give rise to the garnishment, to the extraction, to the stripping away of the rights of our mothers, the stripping away of the rights of our grandmothers, the stripping away of the rights of our wives, of our daughters, of our aunts, and of our nieces. And what is the right of our mothers? And what is the right of our grandmothers? And what is the right of our daughters, aunts, nieces, and wives? They have the right to live in a world filled with men who never grow absent-minded of their priorities. They have the right. They have the right to live in a world filled with men who never grow absent-minded of their responsibilities. They have the right. They have the right to live in a world filled with men who relieve them from the burdens of financial responsibility. They have the right. They have the right to live in a world filled with men who pour out unto their children a knowledge that will lead them to the doorways of inner peace and self-control. They have the right. So I say to the men in the room today, within these razor-wide fences, vertical bars, and concrete blocks, there are entirely too many of us that are subconsciously reliving the childhoods that we never had. So our mothers were forced to work twice as hard, and we developed twice as fast in order to gear the burden of the neglected priorities and responsibilities of our fathers. It is universally accepted that in order for any being to be successful in adulthood, they must, without disruption, pass through the stages of development. And if one of these stages of development are arrested, then development from that point on is deformed. and self-destructive. So I say to the men who live in these quarters, right here, the men in the room today, or the men in the situation today, because all situations are rooms, they're mental rooms. So I say to the men in the room today, the men who live within these quarters, that 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and having to constantly be told, make up your bed, clean up your room. You can eat now. Go to sleep now. You can go outside and play now. You can watch television now. Whenever you hear a steel door slam, it should remind you of your priorities and responsibilities, and you should retrieve your manhood. Whenever you stand in the commissary line like 10-year-old boys to get snacks, the shame of that should remind you of your responsibilities and your priorities, and you should retrieve your manhood. It's never too late. It's never too late. And whenever you look upon these barbed wire, razor wire fences, you should be reminded of the lifestyle in which you live. The lifestyle in which we once lived. We should be reminded of that lifestyle. And that it's get money, flashy cars, big clothes, big wheels. In actuality, this way of thinking and this path that was tread was in actuality quite childish and immature, though we equated it with the prowess of manhood. We've emerged from a lifestyle that is responsible for the detainment, for the incarceration of hundreds and thousands of adult males. Males in whom undergo a psychological arrest before their physical arrest. Males who are reaching out to find their manhood. When there are certain stages of development that never were and left undiscovered. We've emerged from a lifestyle that is responsible for the detainment of hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of adult males. Males in which reside in these adult daycare centers that we call prisons. I say to the men in the room today that this day stands as a proof that we will no longer be absent-minded of our priorities and our responsibilities. From this day forward, that we will go out and use all of our might to return the rights of our mothers to them, to return the rights of our sisters and our daughters and our wives and our aunts to them. From this day forward, we use this day as a proof that we will no longer shove the burden of financial responsibility onto the delicate flowers in whom we represent. matter.